I remember Helen called me up, and we were just talking about all of the things that were going on, specifically all of these hate crimes against Asians in America and the world, and they're not being reported on. And we were very frustrated. I didn't know of it because it wasn't reported on, so how would I have known?
Yeah.
But besides it, and then we were kind of also delving into the history of Asian hate crimes, like throughout, the history of America, and also the world. And our cultures didn't raise us to do things like that. But also, we realized there was a huge gap in um, the in Asian music. It's
Mhm.
not there's not much representation. Like I think there are like less than 5 anthologies that really have all these collected materials that people collected songs that like people might take from, to when they're making a recital or something. And we wanted to showcase some of that. And so
Hey, welcome to my show.
yay, we're here. We finally
Yay!
made it.
Thank you for having us.
Well,
Yes,
I was so
truly.
happy to have you guys on because we spoke just for the audience benefit. We'd spoken a few weeks ago, like about a month ago, I guess, about dedicating a certain number of episodes per month or so to experiences of the API community in our industry. And I wanted to introduce you guys because y'all are the folks behind Wear Yellow Proudly,
Yes.
correct?
Some of like we have three more of us.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole cadre of folks there. So
Yeah.
could you maybe just introduce yourselves in that context and maybe tell us a little bit about some of the work that you guys have been doing to sort of shed some light to these on these issues that I think for a lot of folks in our industry, people just weren't aware of what was going on. So first of all, I want to thank you for that because I myself have been enlightened by much of what you guys have been putting out there.
Helen,
So
tag you're it.
what?
Tag you're it.
Oh no. So my name is Helen Huang, and I am a soprano and also one of the co-founders of Wear Yellow Proudly. I guess I'll just go into what our mission really quickly. Does that sound
Yeah.
good? And then we can talk about how it all started. So our mission, so we were created in 2020, early time of 2020, as a response to the increasing amount of xenophobia towards Asians all across the globe. And Wear Yellow proudly aims to bring awareness to Asian culture by showcasing curated performances of music and poetry, hosting different panel discussions, and celebrating the different skill set of Asian artists. And it's our hope to strengthen the ties within the global community during the COVID-19 pandemic and beyond.
I mean, there were a lot of things that sort of happened during the pandemic like this. I mean, folks that became that all of a sudden they had to, there's a lot of times when we look at these issues, we go, yeah, I mean, I would love to fight for change, but I just don't have the time. And we all had the time in 2020. And so
True.
this is sort of how you guys decided to spend your capital and time, and it's been fantastic to watch it develop over 2020.
Yay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember Helen called me up, and we were just talking about, all of the things that were going on, especially specifically all of these hate crimes against Asians in America and the world, and they're not being reported on. And we were very frustrated. I didn't know of it because it wasn't reported on, so how would I have known?
Yeah.
But besides like things like kung flu, so we were talking about it, and then we were kind of also delving into the history of not just now, but like of Asian hate crimes, like throughout, the history of America, and also the world. Um, and then we were talking about but because we are opera singers and what we could do with our skill set, because we weren't the ones who, at least not yet, maybe in the future, but like we weren't the ones going out in protest.
Right.
um, and our cultures didn't raise us to um, do things like that. And as opera singers, we have to worry about so many things. We have to worry about our voice. We have to worry about our body. You know, all the finicky little things, right? Like acid reflux, and so, but also we realized there was a huge gap in um, the in just in Asian music. It's
Mhm.
not There's not much representation, and there are only I think there are like less than 5 anthologies that really have all these collected materials that people collected songs that like people might take from, to when they're making a recital or something. And we wanted to showcase some of that. And so before Where You Live Proudly started, Helen had 14 days of awareness of like Asian song, and she
Let
did it
me just,
on.
if you don't mind, if I can
No,
rewind
no, please go ahead.
just to talk a little bit about how that all started. So like I was at Nashville right before it started. Was supposed to do a show with you, Mike.
Yeah.
um and we were just getting ready, and I think I saw Alice probably a few days before, um at a competition. We're all wondering what's going to happen with the pandemic. And then a few days later, we were told, "Hey,
Guess
you
what?
can't go home now." And I was, because I saw my entire family almost, at the time, except for my mom, they're all in China at that time. So I already knew it was already happening for
Yeah.
months for me. So I knew how serious it was, and that entire drive, I think it was like 13 hours. I did not stop once. I did not use the bathroom. I don't know if this is kosher for the audience.
Yeah, totally. Man, you should hear some of the things we say on here. No, no holds barred.
Okay. So I got home, and my mom, she was supposed to be back in China at that time already, but she was trapped because of traveling flights was already starting to get canceled. And I wanted to go outside and like wear a mask because, you know, COVID is happening. And she was kind of like, "Oh, yes, it'll protect you, of course, but I'm worried with like the things that we're hearing on the news. People are going to be like, oh, you're an Asian girl wearing a mask. You must have COVID. Let's beat her up."
Yeah, yeah,
Happened before. Um, and then also, like, some of my friends were being called really ugly names, both on the street and on the internet. Stuff that I will not repeat
yeah.
here because it's too terrible to say. And then the thing that kind of, the straw that broke the camel's back was, like Alice said, when then President Trump said Chinese virus and Kung flu, things like that.
Because what I found interesting, just through this particular movement, that's really become much more, uh, has come to the fore much more during the pandemic. That there are issues and problems within our industry, but within society as a
Yeah.
whole, that predate the pandemic. The pandemic didn't just, oh, surprise, there's a bunch of people that are racist against Asian people. But these issues were all there. But when I was talking to Myra and Fleur, one of the things they brought up was this sort of culture of silence around these issues. Like the idea of the model minority or whatever, where, we don't make trouble. We try to like keep things and so whenever the pandemic came and this huge wave of anti-Asian hate came and began to show itself in every aspect of society, but you couldn't look away anymore. Um, do you feel that like that it somehow has enabled people to have conversations that previous to the pandemic and to this wave that they people might not have found as compelling or interesting or
I
even worthy of their time.
I think absolutely. And I think a part of that actually is because my parents and many of our colleagues' parents or grandparents, they all came to the States. And because they were starting from ground zero, it's, one of the things was just keep your head down, work hard. Um, if a fire or a storm, burns it down or ruins everything, then you just have to keep going because you're still alive and you have family to take care of. And I think that translated to like, oh, they're not going to cause trouble. So they're easy pickings, especially during this time. And I think people in my generation and our generation, we now have we grew up because our parents have suffered, our grandparents have suffered, and now we need to take a stand and we need to say something. And we feel that we have the power to say something,
Mm-hmm.
um, especially because a lot of the people that were being attacked were elderly. And in our
That's kind of
culture,
the
that's
irony of the way these attacks have been focused,
mhm,
which is that these elderly folks have been the most quiet about issues. They're not
right.
going to be out in the streets protesting or marching,
Mhm,
but they were the ones that were the most common victims of these kind of
right.
attacks.
So it was enraging to see all of these cowardly acts, and especially because of the pandemic, like us not separated from our parents, separated from our family, and we can't do anything. And that's the worst thing because you can't take care of them. They're like on the other side of the country or the world. And so as people, and we have lost all the jobs due to the pandemic, like what can we do? So one of the things that we recently did was the hashtag Stop Asian Hate benefit concert, because especially in reaction to the Atlanta shootings,
Yeah.
because for me, I think I was worried more because that would inspire people. That violence would
the
inspire even
copycats are gonna come back in, and yeah.
and even exactly, and like bigger acts of violence, because it's been like, I mean, not to not to say that other crimes have not been just as violent, but it was on a larger scale all at once. And then for the news and the government to say, oh, this is not a hate crime,
Yeah.
this also, and for people to say like, oh, they're, whether they were or not, that's not what matters, like, oh, like because the criminal had like a was a deviant or something,
Yeah.
was and stop making excuses. That's how we felt. So I think the Asian community got really riled up and really offended by all of that.
Yeah.
And so we need to keep pushing to say that no, these are, and you know, we just don't feel like we have a place
Well,
in that we were born in,
I
that
wanted
we
to
live in.
add a little bit.
go ahead, Helen.
So Alice and I have talked about this a lot.
Of course.
But also jumping to your earlier point about like when have you guys been talking about this? So I think we all have been talking about it,
Mm-hmm.
but not to this degree
Yeah.
openly. So that I
Hmm.
guess that's one positive thing that came out of this is that at least in the music industry there it feels like there's more of a community because everyone's kind of we have a common goal.
Yeah.
Um, and to your point about the Atlantic Atlanta shooting, um, we've talked about this a lot. That so what upset me the most isn't that as terrible as it is. It's not the fact that it happened. None of us were surprised by this.
Yep.
Yeah.
Um, it's the fact that it took someone dying for people to be like, oh, yeah, it like this crap is really happening. You're not just making all this up in your head.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because we were all told many times during the pandemic, oh, no, 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 you're just overreacting.
Yeah.
Oh, no, you're just crazy. You're just like trying to make yourself feel more important. Oh, it's not your time to talk.
Right.
It's not
That
about
one,
you right now.
when Helen told me that about, when it's not your time to talk, I was like, excuse me?
We've been
You
waiting
don't get
our
to
turn.
tell me when I talk.
Yeah.
Conductors get to tell
It's
me when I
about
get
other
to sing.
minorities. It's not about you right now.
Yeah,
Well,
and
the only reason I knew that I like the only reason I wasn't shocked by Atlanta and by the myriad of random acts of violence we've seen in the streets against elderly Asian people and Asian people is that I have friends in the community. And I was in a text group with a common acquaintance of ours, and the experience that he had during the first part of the pandemic, I was getting this information all the time because he was like, "This happened to me again today. This happened to me on the bus or on the street," and like the idea that you would tell somebody like it's not your time, you shouldn't speak right now, when these things are happening all around you, and the reason why folks are so late to the game with respect to the AAPI community and the injustice that they suffer is due by and large to the effect that we just don't feel like it's our time to talk, or we don't feel like it's we have to wait till let this group have their time and this group have their time, and we'll just wait patiently. Meanwhile, people are getting run down the streets.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something that, especially with the continuation and the explosion in a good way of the BLM movement.
Yeah.
This was, people who know, they know that it's going to take everyone, it's going to take an entire community to make a change, and it's going to take time. And all I feel like, I would be asking for, the Asian community would be asking for, is like a seat at the table.
Yeah.
Being able to participate in these talks.
Not just a seat at a table, but be able to
But
participate.
exactly. And then to have Helen tell me, like, someone said this thing, like someone said it's not your time. It's, what backwards way are we thinking right now?
Yeah.
So all of that really kind of started up Wear Yellow Proudly.
Well,
Because
one thing that I thought was interesting is that we have like leaders in our country, and at that time we had the leader of the free world, using racial slurs, like it was nothing.
and people were cheering.
Yeah, they're like, haha, cheering it at a rally, and retweeting and keeping it going, and like. It's just with any other group, you wouldn't dream of making that overt a racist statement. But yet with your community, these leaders were so comfortable being so cavalierly racist, casually racist, without fear of repercussion. And that must have been incredibly infuriating for you.
It wasn't it was shocking, um just because of that one or two terms
Mm-hmm.
that he actually dared to say, because we knew. And as soon as, so my parents were in Korea when he won the race, and I didn't know if my parents were going to be able to get back in,
Yeah.
because it were I both Helen and I, like, we were brought up in America. I mean, Helen was brought up in China, but there was a sense of, like, the idea of the
A point 0.5 generation.
right, but the idea of the American dream is still very much instilled in us,
Yeah.
and then to see all of that shatter right before your eyes is like, oh, holy shit. Excuse me.
I
But
remember. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
well, and then my parents, they were able to get back, and then they told me you have to start carrying your passport around before real IDs were a thing. And I was like, why? What's happening? And all of the Asian newspapers are saying like people are you're going to be checked for a passport if you're Asian, and you're going to be detained without any reason. And then of course I've also had people, when if I ever share this information, people who were not Asian, they would say like, oh, these are all lies, it's just like news causing panic. And whether it was or not, the fact that that is a believable thing
Mhm.
is what's terrifying.
Yeah.
I remember because I was during the pandemic. I was at one point I was trying to go see my parents in China, and Alice actually called me. Well, your parents also was like,
Yeah,
Helen, are you sure you want to do that? What if you can't get back? Uh,
right.
and you know, it's kind of based on what's happened in the past during the Muslim ban. There are many people that had green cards that were not able to get back in.
Yeah. Were you able to get back, or did you stay?
I didn't end up going.
No.
The flights
Yeah.
got canceled.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is curious. Like, you guys are relatively young. You're younger than me. But to in my generation coming up in the business, it's one of the things that I turned my back on was to play nice, don't make waves, and keep your mouth shut stuff. That was I'm Gen X coming up. The Gen X opera singers all was drilled into your head. Don't make waves. Don't do anything to bring any attention to yourself. Be nice and homogenous. Wear your suit or your jewel tone dress that comes down past your knees. Don't make
We
anybody.
love Jewel tones.
I hate drill tone.
Love Jewel tones. They
Pass
work well with my
out.
skin.
Pass out.
But I mean, and I had a little podcast back in 2010, but even that was not that long ago. Um, but like at your age, I would have been so nervous to speak out and to put myself on the cutting edge of a particular cultural issue. And so, number one, I want to commend you for your bravery because that's incredible. Because it's something I couldn't have done at your age. But does that ever give you like any anxiety about how it may affect the way you move through the business? And is that something you're just like, I just don't give a shit. I just want to get this fixed.
First of all, I want to thank you for your kind words, but I don't know about you, Alice. I honestly don't feel like we're, I mean, to speak, to make sure that like people like us are alive and living livable lives is not something that's cutting edge or revolutionary or that should be controversial. So
But in an ideal world, I agree with you. But you guys are the first. I mean, you're the first organization to confront this issue in our industry. Like this has never been done before.
I mean,
I would probably even say like I sometimes feel we don't confront it enough because uh, you know when I'm writing statements, when I'm writing captions or anything, I am still using a lens that is making sure that um, we won't offend anyone,
mhm.
unfortunately, in a perfect world. But at the same time, we know that in order to be even given a second of attention on the other side, we know that we have to play that, political game
Yeah.
of like, look, this is not about what party you're with. This is not about politics. It's about humanity. And I think that's where we find our power. We're talking about human lives. We're talking about human stuff.
Mm.
This should not be a difficult conversation to have, you know? So I think if we base everything, if we use that as our foundation, which we do, and which we hope to continue, then it shouldn't be a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah.
And it's in our missions that we don't, for me, I don't think it's effective if all you do is just like hammer the idea into someone.
Or you're
Yeah.
screaming.
Yeah, it doesn't,
Yeah.
someone that does that to me, I don't want to listen.
Right.
Like, just to be completely honest.
Especially nowadays, when all we had during the pandemic was social media.
So, yeah, it is that fine line that you have to walk.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you like with respect to our industry, because this is an opera show, to opera specifically, and there are a lot. I mean, if you want to talk about issues with the Asian community and the opera industry, well, there's a few obvious things that come to mind. But what are some of the main concerns and things that you guys are confronting with respect to the opera industry, and what kind of changes would you like to see in the industry as a whole?
You
I
want to go
think,
first?
sure.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
I think the opera industry really is a microcosm of the bigger world. Um, so Alice and I, we met at Central City with working with you, Mike.
Yeah.
Um,
First time meeting everyone here.
yes. And for some reason, when there are two Asian people around, the identifier for people is just that you're Asian. And so, like, we were constantly being called each other's names.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think microaggression is the biggest thing
Yeah.
that you see in terms of racism towards Asians in this country and everywhere.
There
Um,
is there is a kind of a fallback position that they look at Asians as just Asian. They don't realize that there's an entire one of the most diverse diasporas that you can
yeah.
possibly imagine.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way to paint that with a broad brush.
Right.
Also, like, we don't look that similar, you and I.
Yeah.
I mean, the
Where
fact
our
that we
voices are
have
not
all the time.
similar.
Yeah.
I'm taller than you.
Yeah.
Like our hair is different textures. Um, yeah, but I mean, to be fair, I will say like, I feel like I'm like the factor. I don't know what it is about me, but like many different people have given me so many different names.
Yeah.
Like I think in high school, like people would accidentally call me like a total of 10 different names.
Yeah.
But and we were always together.
We were.
So in that particular instance, I did not feel like it was a
Agreed.
microaggression,
Yeah.
But
but it does happen all the
all the
time.
time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Do you
And
hear a lot of like people that speak about? I know this is. I mean, this is something I encountered in college and stuff with old school voice teachers and stuff, and they would be like, "Well, Koreans sound like this.
Oh, all the
Chinese
time.
singers
all
sound.
the time.
African American, or let's say black singers sound like this." Do you get a lot of that when you?
Yes. I've also gotten, Asian, especially Chinese singers have a reputation of being bad at language and cannot move on stage. So, Helen, you got to make sure that you're really good with languages and are really good on stage. Otherwise, no one will hire you.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
an extra high bar for you.
Yeah.
Right.
Along with everything else that you have to do, you also have to be perfect.
Yeah. For me, I'm like, people can't see my eyes if they're sitting far back enough. So I'm just, act with my body. But, and that was also a thing, like growing up, they're like, oh, you're out, like, open your eyes. Your eyes are so small. Like, why are they so small? But what?
I have a question for you. Are you a pianist? Oh, we've seen you many times. You've played for us before.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I've actually seen that happen.
I got one a couple days ago
Yeah.
again.
Oh,
Let's
gosh.
assume that you're in the orchestra or you're a pianist. Couldn't possibly be a singer.
No.
Which actually leads to something that I want to mention. So my second time at Central City, when we were doing Trovatore and flute, I had the opportunity to do a recital, and One of the audience members was this wonderful Asian lady. I do not know her ethnicity, but she was she just came up to me after the recital and she was like, thank you so much for being here. It was such a joy to see an Asian face, an Asian singer. Like, whether it's in this part of the area or like just an Asian singer. And that's something that I didn't really I was like, yeah, like, but I also didn't really think about until then that it's not that there are a lack of Asian singers, it's there's a lack of Asian representation, I feel. Um and like and also but there is because there's a lack of Asian representation, Helen, that's why like we feel that a lot of us feel like we don't have Asian singers to look up to. Like ones that were like way in the past. So, I when I'm thinking of like someone singing, like I'm thinking all of these European singers
Yeah.
or even an American singers, like, but I know nothing about other Korean singers, like except Sumi Jo, because I grew
Mhm.
up listening to her. Um, or but I couldn't now I can, but back then I wouldn't be able to name a Korean mezzo, a famous Korean mezzo, and that's just something that I think people take advantage. They're not aware of the privilege
Yeah.
that they have people to look up to, and so when people say like, oh, like I don't want to be compared to this person because you know, um, I want to be my own person. Yes, but first of all, we are all our own person. Um, but I would love to have even a little bit of what you get to hear recordings of this person, real good recordings of this person. I have no one.
Yeah.
And to just know that someone that looks like you have done that, like it's possible.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a tremendous. I mean, Helen, you were saying earlier that that's it's sure there's issues that are specific to the classical community, but it really is representative of a larger society. And all of the racial stereotypes that other groups have to deal with. For instance, I just did an interview with my friend Eric Green, and he was talking, and we're talking about like late '90s, early 2000. He was up for a Pagliacci, and he was going to sing Silvio and then Neda, and Neda was this beautiful blonde white lady, and Eric is about 6'6", 250 pounds, muscles on top of muscles, black dude. And they would not cast him. And they were pretty bold about it, pretty explicit back then. They wouldn't say it today, but they were like, yeah, we just can't have that interracial. This company, we can't have that interracial company and that sort of big. You understand. And so, whereas today we probably wouldn't blink about something like that, at this company it was a deal. And those racial stereotypes about who can do what and who can play a lover, who can play a villain, etc. Those things play so much into casting, and it just can't help it. So, can you speak a little bit about how those common stereotypes that are in our society have sort of worked their way into the casting process, and how we can sort of work to change our perceptions about who can play what when?
I think um, what I would be asking for from a company in a casting standpoint is, be conscious of, be color conscious, or like culturally conscious. Um, but also, I would not ask them to lower their musical standards.
Yeah.
I feel like that's also been happening a little bit, um, because they want to fulfill the diversity quota.
Like
They
we
want to
don't want to feel that we were being pity on.
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I honestly, coming out of I mean, we're still in the pandemic, probably for another year, but like I wouldn't say no to a job, but at the same time, I would also want to have earned it.
Yeah.
I want to be hired because it's me, not not because of like how I look, not because of, I fulfill a checklist or any of those things. And what I ask of, my colleagues who deserve the chance to sing like roles, like certain roles that are like, culturally different from them, is that you do them with the respect that they deserve.
Mhm.
And you do your research. Don't do some caricature. Like, even if it wasn't my culture and I saw a caricature happen, it would make me livid. You know,
I've been
I
on
know, like,
stage with some pretty outrageous
yeah,
caricatures. Just like we
right,
doing that, are we? Okay.
right. And another thing I ask is like, if it wasn't necessarily also just like opera, if they're like planning a program, like if people are planning on bringing in like guest artists and things, they're like, we need more diversity. Please stop using diversity as a token word. It's we're not little pieces for you to play with. Like, celebrate the person's whatever their ethnicity is. Like, celebrate who they are, celebrate the differences, and then also celebrate the similarities that we all share as human beings,
Yeah.
And also, the color of our skin is not what make us diverse.
Right.
or the shape of
There's
our eyes.
so much behind all of that.
Mm-hmm.
That's what makes us different and diverse and interesting.
I mean, just as a side note, like, some of the most successful concerts that I've done have nothing to do with opera. It has to do with what I bring from my own culture. Like
Yes.
Yeah.
redneck dude from, and I'll do pieces that incorporate that ethic, whether it's just doing straight up country bluegrass music or blending the two. But it's that fusion. It's sort of that combination of the two things, and what that produces. For me, it's way more interesting. And like when I was in college, when someone would do a recital of a bunch of just dead white dudes, sure, fine. But when someone actually stood up, we had like at least two students that did music from where they were from, and that was 10 times more compelling. Like I was there. All of a sudden, like I've left my seat, and I'm with you up there on stage, and like I know that Fleur and Myra released an album of nothing but even it was Pan Asian music, and some things like she's like, I can't speak this language. I'm just learning like everybody else. But I think that, I mean, do you think that it would be a
We can't hear you, Helen.
Oh, but her Chinese is really good.
oh, nice. But I mean, when you're talking about companies that are like seeking to be diverse through like let's just plug a person into a role and then done. Like, do you think that it would be a really helpful tool for a company looking to try to help serve a community better to maybe engage in those kinds of projects, like concerts and recitals and such that exhibit Asian music and that allow people from that community to bring their own sort of something they know better than anyone else to a place for an audience to enjoy.
Absolutely.
That sounds, yeah.
Yeah, because you can't just plug a person into a role and say, "Oh, there, we've our thing." Like, you have your representation. That's not how it works.
Yeah,
You have to maintain this. You have to keep the talks going. You have to maintain the idea until, all of society like finds it as a norm,
yeah,
and that's going to take forever. But, you know, it's probably for the best because we have to keep working that way.
yeah,
Otherwise, they'll just get lost and we'll move on to the next topic.
I was gonna say, I feel like we're not an opera company, but that's what we try to do at Wear Yellow Proudly. We try to, you know, bring people that are the expert in their field that's not commonly seen. Like we had this Japanese dancer that came on to teach traditional Japanese dance, and then we had the kung fu master to teach Tai Chi, and we all sang songs in our native tongues and some not native tongues, but it was like a way to get in touch with our culture. Um, Yeah, I mean, we try really hard to do exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
And also for people to, you don't have to be Asian to sing Asian songs. We, in fact, if that was the only way, then like we wouldn't get anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
We want people to celebrate our different cultures with us and be very specific about it, like learn all of these things. There's
Well,
it's
I
like
mean,
an entire
frankly,
world.
it's absurd to me that we don't compose more operas in languages that we're not used to singing them, and like we do this all the time. Like people from Asia are forced to learn French, German, Italian, and same thing with Americans. We can't speak anything else. We have to sing in all these other languages, and somehow it's such an out there concept that we would do something in Korean or Chinese or Arabic or any other language that's uncommon. We all learn. We have the tools to learn languages. I mean, does anybody ever like really have an emotional knowledge of what they're singing about when they're singing Czech for the first time? Like, come on, you're sticking vowels for consonants for the most part, and you're picking it up along the way. But let's be honest, it's not a. But you learned how to sing it. Why can't we do that with other languages? Why can't we just compose some pieces and
We can.
We can,
yeah,
and people are, and people are getting less afraid of you know in, going into new territory. And for me personally, when I was before I learned IPA, when I was learning an Italian song, I was like, oh, this is actually very similar to Korean.
yeah,
I Because a lot of Korean vowels they're pure vowels, with the exception of like one or two, and then the consonants are like they're a very mixture of not too plosive and not too dental.
yeah.
So it was it helped me a lot. And once people find similarities, then and Korean also helped me with Russian.
I was gonna say Chinese helps me with Russian a lot.
Yeah,
There are a
yeah.
lot of
So
similar vowels and consonants.
mhm. So you just need to find, number one, have a native speaker help you, and then go from there.
I've I've heard. I mean, this is a subject we should. I mean, we should probably talk about since we're here. But you know, from some corners of our business, I've heard them say things like, "We shouldn't do Madame Butterfly. It should just be out of the repertoire." Mikado, Turandot, they need to be eliminated. And then there's some people say we should do them, but only cast them with race appropriate singers. It runs the gamut. What do we? I guess my question is, what do we do with these pieces that are so like to a different, like if I wanted to compare it to some sort of like misappropriation of culture, which is no way near it, no way near it. But for me, like Fanchula del West, I look at this and I go, well, that's not what cowboys were like.
Right.
But like,
Right.
and that's almost a silly example, but you know what I mean. Like, what do we do with these
Not a
pieces
silly.
that are so problematic in a time where we're trying to be more racially sensitive?
I think I can only speak for my opinion, and I think my view is still changing
Yeah,
as
I'm
well.
not. I'm not. I just want to make sure you're not. I'm not saying what's the Asian take on this.
Of course
Speak for
not.
all the Asians, please.
For
Everyone's different.
me,
They all have different ideas. Like even within our team, we
Mhm.
all we disagree, which is a great thing because we want to be a reflection of, our society, our community.
yeah, and
Yeah.
you learn from each other
Yeah.
too.
hmm Personally, I think we could just, sorry, I was
Go ahead.
just one quick thing. Out of all the ones that you named, the only thing that I would really throw away is the Mikado.
Yeah. Agreed. We could this.
Interesting.
Don't
Interesting.
need that anymore, really.
No, I mean, like, there are so many other, like, if you wanted to do GNS operettas, like, there are plenty of good ones. We don't actually need that one. Do it out of context. Do excerpts, like, Three Little Maids of School, or just really cute for like little kids and things. But I'm just saying. Helen.
See, I would think the opposite.
Really, you want to keep the Mikado?
Yes, because it's not about the Japanese at all. It's a commentary on the British using like
See,
another
you know it more than I do, but yeah, it's
to me
ugh.
problem with Madama Butterfly is that it's slightly different from Chula del West because more people around the world understands American culture and are less likely to be like, oh, this is what
No
cow.
one's gonna say Americans are like this way.
Yeah,
Da do da do da do.
but there are unfortunately there's still a lot of people in the world that are like, oh, this is how the Japanese walk. Oh, this is how geishas are. Oh, like you can get married at I don't remember the age.
14, I think, or 16.
14.
Yeah, she's 14.
14.
But see, that for to me, in the world that we live now, like I think for the generation, the a few generations above us, they would think that like, well, I'm having the privilege of embodying a culture, embodying, but to me nowadays, it's a matter of what the director chooses to do.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You can turn it into a modern piece, or you can or you can keep it traditional, but then do your research.
Yeah.
Right.
Like there are going to be problems no matter what opera you're going to do. Like there's always going to be inaccuracies,
Hmm.
and those are the problems that hopefully you have a good director and you have a good cast and you talk about it.
Yeah.
But I don't think you should throw away a piece like
No,
entirely.
I'm not saying it
No,
should
I'm not.
go
I
away.
know.
I'm just saying in my view, I think the Mikado is more acceptable.
I just can't because not everyone will be thinking, "Oh, this is social commentary."
Right.
That's my only thing, and it's the same thing with the butterfly. Like, you can see it however it is. Like,
I mean, when I see Butterfly done right, I think America sucks. Look at these fucking. I see it right. Like when they're trying to like make Pinkerton into a human being, I'm like, no, he's not. He's an asshole.
the one time they get to boo the tenor.
Yeah. Right. No, but it's not like the idea that we should strike these from the repertoire is probably never going to happen. And so like what was hearing from you guys was that you know these pieces are part of the repertoire now. We're going to do them, doing them in a way that's respectful and that sort of honors the traditions, even though that these even though some of these pieces are kind of outdated and stuff. That if we can use them to sort of amplify and magnify and not diminish, this is the way to do it. But that's a really delicate dance to
Right.
dance.
And that's what art is, right?
Exactly.
Exactly. Helen, you wanted to say one more thing.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if you are able to add this. Um, okay, this is just something really little, but it really bugs me when people do these operas. Um, because unfortunately, like a lot of times when opera companies put Butterfly, especially on, some form of yellow face is being used.
Oh,
No matter how subtle it is, it's still there.
And this is not something we should still be doing.
It like hurts my soul when my friends are putting up pictures of themselves in these costumes and makeups. And I know their intention is not ill in any way. It's just them being proud of what they're doing and you know
But that thing is something
it like hurts my soul.
we can't agree that, right? That we don't need to do the makeup anymore.
the thing is, okay, here's my one comment. I use makeup to make my eyes look rounder
Yeah.
because and that is
That's different.
I know, but I'm saying like makeup is used so ultimately in society, we use makeup to quote unquote fit in with society.
Hmm.
So if they're trying to portray things quote unquote correctly, and it's not that I believe this, I'm just using the I'm being the devil's advocate, or like what people in past generations believe to be like this, full storytelling, including makeup. I personally don't feel the need that we need to, because there are plenty of cultures where you and everyone everywhere, like you skin skin tone is based on a number of genes, not one gene. Um, so that doesn't really matter to me. The shape of my eyes. There are also plenty of people who are not Asian with almond shaped eyes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So it doesn't bother me, but again, that's gonna have to be left to directors who make that decision. I would like to say, like, if you're gonna do anything with makeup, whether it's changing your skin color or doing the eyes, do not make it a caricature.
Yeah.
That's what I hate. That's where I get livid. Like, you don't have to go, 10 shades of dark for an Nutella.
No.
Why,
I
like, do you
know.
do you need it? Do you need, like, some people need it, I guess, but I don't feel the need to see someone in a different skin color to know that they're being ostracized, you know?
Mhm.
My only
So,
my only argument for the for abolishing the practice altogether is that it's if you have I mean you're what you described was so like if you have like an artist makeup artist who's really great at their job and they're just a top notch and they can do things in a super subtle way that's not racist or that's not really a caricature but like it's dancing that line, that's all well and good for like the Met. But when you're in like Duluth
stop.
and you got
You
no,
have
this
to
is my
say,
whole career. This is my whole career for 20 years. I mean, when I would do like Bohem or not Bohem, like Butterfly and Turandot and some companies, and some makeup artists were getting real nuts. And I think the first time I ever became was conscious of it was I was doing Turandot, and I was singing one of the P's, Ping. I mean, his name is Ping. What the fuck? Anyway, um, but I had at least had like mask makeup, so I looked like I was wearing a funny mask. But like, it was this huge chorus, and like every principal and everybody was from every race was completely made up to look over the top, over the top. And I think the problem is like if it's kind of okay, then you're gonna have people out in the places where we need to sort of like disabuse people of these racist notions the most, like leaning into the stereotypes in order to make it look, Japanese or Chinese or whatever.
I feel like if you're on a certain size of a stage, number one, do you even does that even read? Also, if you can't read, does that matter? Especially for the chorus, in my opinion. Like, I why is that necessary? Also, especially if you're looking at like a huge like China is huge, and there's so many different cultures, and people all look different. There are people in the actual country that have blue eyes. So are you gonna just put a blue-eyed person? Like, I just, that's what I don't get, because everyone thinks all Asians look the same,
Oh man,
and we don't.
China
And
itself has cra- the craziest range of just different like racial and ethnic groups. It's amazing, and coming up in America, you don't learn about that stuff. I read the Silk Road, so like, I learned that long tome of a book, and like, oh, I'll be damned.
right.
Yeah.
And then also on the other side, you have Americans who, like, y- we're a hodgepodge, and we should celebrate all parts of our identity,
Yeah.
you know, rather than just being saying, "Oh, I'm American."
One interesting project I did Nixon in China and in Germany, and they set it in the future.
Tell me.
It was great.
Oh,
They set it
future.
into the future, and the summit took place on the moon, and America was like the society that was in decline, and China was on the rise. And China was the empire, and we were like sort of the old dying light. And so China's delegation was multiracial, multi-ethnic, and we just totally divorced all these racial identities from geography, so that like Shigeo and Shino played Henry Kissinger, and Jared Ott played Joe and Lai, and Matthias Klink was Chairman Mao, but like with a German accent, like full on German, you know. Uh, the Madame Mao was Ganya Ben Ax. Oh, shit, it's Ganya. I'm doing the terrible white guy thing. Like, oh, it's not Smith, so I can't say it. But everybody,
I have trouble with names.
yeah, but everybody came from a different place, and so their names were not, you know, we just didn't need any of the makeup. We didn't need any of the signifiers in order to tell the story. The story was still told. I think it was much more effective.
Yeah.
I want to say something that's way off topic. Has nothing to do with it. I heard that when you did that show, you tried a pomelo and you hated it. Seth Carrico told me, and I was so upset.
Almost.
How
So
can you not like a pomelo?
it's like a grapefruit that just made a deal with the devil. It's awful.
The skin? Is that why?
I thought I tried it every way. I just couldn't get into it. But I mean, I gave it a few shots. I just couldn't get on with the pomelo.
I don't think I've ever had one.
It's like a mutant grapefruit.
Fed me pomelo before.
Isn't it just a grapefruit?
No,
Okay.
but like sweeter.
It's big. It's bigger. It's tougher.
Okay.
It's got like
Oh, is it like the yellow ones?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
inside you like
Oh, they're fine.
a lot
Oh,
of fiber.
Fed them to me before.
I have. I can't remember all of these things. There are too many things.
Well, guys, I want to thank you so much for coming on and speaking so frankly about this. I know that it's going to enlighten some folks because my audience is made up of not only opera professionals and singers and stuff, but people on the board and in the audience as well. And I think that this is an issue that's been sort of it's just not been it's not been sort of brought forth for us to speak frankly about and discuss. And your candor is greatly appreciated because I think it will help folks sort of understand a little bit better the kind of struggles you guys have to face and maybe work on eliminating some of those microaggressions that we have to face, that you have to face every day.
Thank you so much for having us and, for lending us your platform.
No, my pleasure.
It was so fun to have this talk.
Yeah, it's great.
It was.
It's good to see you guys again.
Yes. Hopefully in person
I know.
Yeah,
soon.
make some more opera.
Please.
Yes,
Get
please.
together again soon.
It's coming. Just hold on. There's one rule in this business: he who lasts the longest wins. So you just hang on, because eventually there's just nobody who has as much experience as you do. So you get the jobs.
As a soprano, though.
It's just gonna hold on harder and longer, like everything else.
That's right. Like a
Fight
bulldog,
fight
just
as many
mer.
challengers.